All right, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Aware Athlete Show. Today, we have a special guest, Dr. Eric Holsapple. And Dr. Eric is a longtime teacher. Well, from childhood he was an entrepreneur. So business has come more or less easy to him. And also, he spent years teaching business at Colorado State University, which coincidentally is where I met my wife and where I was
Oh,
attending at one time.
beautiful.
Yeah. So it's a great facility,
Yeah,
a great university.
it is.
So you spent a lot of time teaching there. And then also you have had various mindfulness practices for, I'm thinking, around 30 years.
I've
And
had my own for that long, and I've been leading others for about 10 or so in different formats of yoga and mindfulness, more towards professionals, business professionals, and than anything else. But yes.
right. And you have a book entitled Profit with Presence.
Yes, I do.
I like that. It's a minor semantic thing, but there are also a lot of people who think in terms of profit from presence.
You know, actually, the publisher came back with that title. I said, no, we're
Yeah,
not trying to take it from that. It's just
yeah.
that we can participate with it. We
We're-
can have presence as we
mhm.
the business community, I mean, we're in a capitalist society. The idea that we can't be mindful in our business is crazy. You know,
That's right.
it's nuts.
That's right.
So,
There are a lot of people who would take a more superficial approach, but that's not what we're going to do today.
no, why bother?
Yeah. All right. So the word mindfulness is not popular with certain populations of people, and it gets thrown around so much it may have particular connotations. So before we get into exactly what mindfulness is, and by the way, I want to compliment you because you have a business nonprofit, I believe, called Living in the Gap. And
Yeah, I
we'll
do.
get back to that because I think that's a very cool title.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I just come at it like I for years I did just mindfulness practice on my own. And then gradually it came into the business, and I just kept it private. But later when I, was a little more in the twilight of my career, I said, how are we going to make a difference here for other people in the world and what's going on? So I've become a little more public with it. But I just find the business community, you have to say they just kind of look at you with that strange eye and go, "Oh, that's woo woo. I don't have time for, maybe when I retire or, I'll take a little weekend and, I'll look at that a little bit. I don't have time for that." And the mindfulness community, God love them. Business is a dirty word. Money's dirty,
Yeah.
and I just said, I just don't believe either of those. That if we, as I said, if we live in a capitalist society, that's what we have to find a way to live in this society mindfully, because I think that's what's missing from capitalism is mindfulness, is compassion and mindfulness. Because if we all give back a little bit as we can make this system work, and it's a great system. I mean, it's so freeing and so creative, and mindfulness just works so great in it. But so there's a lot of $10 sentences for mindfulness, the ability to pay attention on purpose, non-judgmentally, but when I boil all those down, it's all so that I can focus and absorb and be present to something. And especially in a business context, I can focus on what I choose to focus on to the exclusion of all the other nonsense, all the other distractions, diversions, divisions. Can I just focus, on speaking with who I'm speaking to at the moment or doing what I'm doing at the moment? And then, we try to have our meetings without, iPads open and laptops open and taking phone calls and things. And we find that they cut in half. You get twice as much done in half the amount of time. And the other thing that's kind of unique probably to our program, it's focused to professionals, but is, and then we teach you to how, when you go home at night, to turn that focus on to your family and your loved ones and leave the business behind. because this constant drip of everything means we're nowhere. We try to be everywhere at once on the news cycle, on, Facebook, on whatever it is, Twitter, whatever they are today. And to be present and not to miss anything, fear of missing out. And we miss out on our lives. We miss out on,
Yeah.
people that we're with. And I find that's this we're here to connect. We're made to connect with each other. And there's some ways, there's some great benefits of everything going on, connection, but we have to use them mindfully or they just destroy it, you know?
Right. So you're speaking of being able to go from one situation to another and turn one situation off and turn on another. And
Yeah.
I think you can do that if in your life presence is the prime priority because it's not such a big, you're not transitioning from your prime priority. You're just transitioning into another situation.
I find it takes quite a bit of time. We run a mindful leadership program that's 9 months, and hopefully with a little preparation even before then, if it's possible. And I find that it takes a while for people to even realize what being present is. We get an intellectual idea of it, but until we really experience it, and we've had times, dramatic events, nature, there's some times when we really have it, but in our day-to-day existence, everything, and I would blame business a lot for this because we're so good at it. Everything's stealing our attention. And we don't, I mean, everything is slipping in and grabbing a piece of it here and a piece of it there. And that's what most of our businesses are about is like, how do we get their attention? How do we get them to buy mine and not you? And I think business is great. It's the individual has got to take it back and say, no, that's my attention. You can get it when I give it to you,
Yeah.
but not now. I just had two texts and the last was just sitting up on this for political things, I don't know how they get my number, but it's just constant.
Yeah, exactly. Distraction is huge. It's huge in America. It's huge in the culture. It's huge in the entire world. What grabs your attention? Just
So we have to take it back. We have to start noticing and start experiencing what presence is. Because the big practice, in my experience, is starting to notice when you're present and when you're not. And you keep coming back to, okay, I'm going to be present. I didn't want to be present. Now. And as soon as you notice, you're present. And when you're lost in it, you're not.
right.
So,
Right. I know that you're not saying this, and I certainly know that I can't do it. I am not 24/7 every single
no,
moment
no,
present. But
if I was, we'd get my wife on here and she would straighten me out.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Uh, but we can move in that direction.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing. Now, you already mentioned or alluded to people thinking that these practices take a long time. So we could investigate that from a couple of places, but just a little practical thing here. I know that I have noticed in the past that at the breakfast table, if I will only take, even if it's only 30 seconds to set an intention for the day, it makes a difference. And who doesn't have 30 seconds,
Yeah.
to begin their day?
And I find actually the error that some people make, quite a lot of people make, is to do too much at first. That it's all about, I believe we're our habits. We become our habits. That's, what we do. But that if we start off saying, oh, now I'm going to meditate 20 minutes every day and twice I just find even really stout people, now some people make it and it's great. Or if you're in an environment where you've gone away somewhere and that's what you're doing, but in most of it, people get discouraged. They do that for half a dozen days, 10 days, and they go, oh, I just can't. I just, I tried and it just makes me crazy. We recommend you start with 2 minutes of meditation. And if you were going to do one thing, like you said, intention, another would be gratitude. It takes less than a minute, to set 3 gratitudes for the day.
Yeah.
What am I grateful for today? And it changes your whole mindset. It just changes. Then I start
Yeah.
looking for things to be grateful for versus things to be upset for, you know? So yeah, I think people start with too much. And then as you get into it a little bit, you actually want more. You feel that peace a little bit and you go, huh, that felt pretty good. And as you have a little more time, the other thing I think happens after you go on is you become more efficient and you waste less time and you have more time to do it. So, I recommend people to calendar their time for a couple weeks even before they start. Just notice where you're wasting time, whether it's in your social media or in the
Yeah.
news or gossiping or just whatever it is. Just a couple weeks and say, hey, could I find 10 minutes in my schedule? If I really had something I wanted to do, and then later it's a half an hour, and maybe, we take people up to an hour and then we let them back off if that's, but it's the consistency and regularity. And as you said, the intention's everything, man. What's my motivation? What's my intention behind what I'm doing? It's so huge.
Yeah, the best practice in the world can't do much for you if you don't have intention and openness. It has to come from,
It's a robotics. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What is my intention?
Now you mentioned something there already about habits, that
Yeah.
we live most of our life by habits. That's got to be 100% true. And due due to that fact, we don't have as much free will as we might think we do. But um, a lot of times it doesn't matter. I don't want to learn how to tie my shoes every morning
Yeah.
or drive a car, things like that. But where it really matters, then we have a choice.
Well, and take it back to intention. You want to have an intentional life. You can be intentional about your habits, or they can just be what has been given to you and what you happened on you. Just happened.
Right.
What society's given us and those kind of things. But if I'm intentional, then I can start to, and with some awareness, I can start to be aware of what my habits are, because without awareness, I don't even know what half of them are. I'm just dribbling along from one thing to the next. But I can start to be aware of what they are. And then over time, I can shift from ones that I find desirable to what I intend, to who I want to be, and away from those that are distracting from who I want to be and that person that I think I should be.
Right. Right. So this thing about work, work demands our attention because generally, in most companies, they don't care about what's going on with you as long as you got the job done.
Yeah.
They don't care if you got it done in a way that was harmful to yourself, to cause you too much stress or did this or that, as long as you got the job done. That's not all companies, obviously, but that we have a lot of that. And I have found, that then you talked about distraction. In my past, I've had a production oriented job where they expected you to do something and do so much. And I try to comply. And by the end of the day, I have not had enough time to take a deep breath or think any
Mm.
of my own thoughts. And I find that uh, that type of situation, especially when perhaps you're successful, you are providing for your family, that's a good thing. Uh, but you get up, you go to work, you eat, you go to bed, you get paid, you eat, you go to bed, you work, and that's all there is to life because your total attention has been hijacked. You
Oh,
haven't allowed it to be hijacked. And I found sometimes in my life that the greatest suffering I've ever had has been around that because of the feeling of emptiness when you live that way. Can you
and
comment on that?
I sure can. And we feel like a lack of clarity and a lack of purpose.
Mhm.
So I have an antidote for it. I say, let's play a game of baseball. Would you like you bear with me for a little second, a little baseball analogy?
Sure.
Because I think you got to get your priorities set right. I mean, I believe, the first thing that I need to work on in the day, and I believe in the morning, maybe it isn't that way for everybody, but I believe it's the most impactful, is to get my mindset right, my spiritual work, if that's
Mhm.
prayer, if that's meditation, to get myself in the right mindset before I step up to the plate.
Mhm.
And that's before I, really want to take on what life is bringing me that day. I say life is a pitcher, and I don't know what I'm going to get. I don't know if I'm going to get a curveball or a slider or a spitball or a tsunami or a plague or, a lottery. I don't know what I'm going to get that day, but I know that my mindset is going to be what gets me on base or not. If I can look at that in the right way. And for me, first base is my family and friends. Now, it wasn't always that way. In my 20s, it was work,
Yeah.
but for me, and I think you got to get really square with what's your first base? Because if my family is set, then when I go to second base, which for me is work, I can be clear and go to work without the distraction of family. And I know that my family's taken care of. So I can have the greatest job in the world, but if my family is a mess, that job's not going to mean a lot to me.
Mhm.
And I think what you're alluding to, I think employers got that. They're just kidding themselves. You think that people are there just for you. No, they're there to provide for their families. And it's not really genuine to have it some other way. And I think employers are afraid to let people say, no, you know what? If you got to go take care of them, go. Now, there's some people that can't handle that and will take advantage of it. That you give them time off to go take care of their family or whatnot. But I just know I walk down the hall and people are on their texts and their Facebook and checking in with family and whatnot. And I say, well, if you really had that taken care of, it might have to be the night before or morning before you come in. When you get to work, you can focus on work. And I said, I can move the world if I can really focus for a couple hours. I can do a lot. But if I'm scattered everywhere and here and there, so I say second base is work, and then I get my work done. Third base to me is community service, because I also believe I'm not much use to a community service organization if I don't have my job set, I don't have financial resources, or I get laid off, or my family's a mess and I got to leave, and I'm not really setting the example that I'm not even there to do. So I need to get my priorities set. And I say, well, okay, if I can get my family on first, I got my mindset, family, job, community service, and then that's a home run. I can get them all done, but I need to be able to focus and prioritize right. And I think you're right on that you shouldn't expect that people are going to put their job ahead. It's not healthy of their families. And if their job is not working with their families, they're not going to be there long term,
Yeah.
and they're going to get sick.
Yeah.
So
I've had a lot of experience with work because I'm going to be 74 in April.
I'm chasing you, but I'm not
So,
there yet, but I'm chasing you.
you're
I'm 65. I'm
you're
65.
65? Oh, you're a youngster.
I'm just a baby. The babies are on Medicare though.
Yeah. That's true. You could be. Uh, so I've also had an experience where there's a lot of cynicism, or at least I have experienced and seen cynicism in the workplace, and a lot of times employers will bring in somebody to talk to the employees about safety or about the health of your family or about building teams or something like that, and they only do it because they're required to, and so it's not very meaningful. But I've seen I had another work situation where we're not going in chronological order where we might in this interview.
Yep.
It's all right. I've seen another situation where the person who was our supervisor was entirely sincere and entirely built a very loving team. That's rare, but what a wonderful thing. And so that brings us to where you, as a CEO, could bring a culture
Yeah.
that couldn't exist without somebody encouraging it. It might
Yep.
exist in an individual, but not as a cohesive team in the workplace without the CEO.
Yeah. Well, I write about that. I'm going to poke a little bit at the word entirely, because that supervisor still needs to get the job done and turn a profit.
And she does.
Right. I mean, so entirely and getting the job done, because without making a profit, we just can't be in it long term. So, I mean, it does, you do have to perform, and sometimes you got to make tough choices on your team because everybody's not able. Like take remote work. Some people are better at remote work than others. Some people aren't responsible enough, to be home and not have that. As employers, we love people in the hallway because it's command and control. We can walk down the hall and kick butt, and know when somebody's doing this or that. But if they're at home, we lose it. There's a lot more trust involved, and it isn't, not everybody is as good at it as others. So it's getting the right team involved so that you can also, yeah, care about them and know that they got your back. But when you let people know that you care about them as a person,
Yeah.
not just, I mean, and I was guilty of it for years, knowing enough about someone to get what I wanted, what
Yeah.
I needed. I got to get that pro forma out. I got to get this done. So, a couple niceties and then, yeah, let's get at it, versus starting to really know somebody that is a person just like I am and have hopes and dreams and,
Mhm.
disappointments and, slowing down enough to actually see them as a person, their essence as a being.
So,
That's huge though. The qualitative component of that is huge. That's where you start not feeling like, hey, I'm only going to work to make money so I can go home to have a life. No, I can be enriched at work. I can meet people that I love at work,
mhm.
real people, and get that connection that is not that I'm exhausted at night because I've just been pounding it. So the payback is huge for employees. Now, I also know a lot of people that say, gosh, I might have to lay them off one day. I can't get to know them. I say, come on.
Yeah.
You can't say no to your kids. You love your kids. You can't, draw a boundary around it. I can lay somebody off if I have to. I'm a leader.
Yeah.
I'm a leader. I can do it compassionately, lovingly, responsibly. I can also take the things of this, I find if you're actually in connection with somebody, you can say anything, you
Yeah.
know,
So
just
never say never, never say entirely.
so no, I just think it's just I think it's an excuse so many times. I can't get to know them.
Oh,
You're
that
just,
type of thing. Yeah. The
I can't.
person I'm talking about, I haven't worked there for several years, and and they still care about you.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the people I work with.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. So it's still important, I think, because you were once 10 years old and then 20 years
Yeah.
old and so on. I think it's still important to maybe hint at or describe some of the suffering that you have gone through that brought you to this place.
Yeah. As a kid, I was always in trouble. Uh, my dad used to say, my dad was a football coach. Little kids, little trouble, big kids, big trouble. And that was
Yeah.
true for me.
Yeah.
There were two exceptions to it. One was work. We worked uh, all the time. My dad was a coach and he had a side job. We were on a summer camp and all that kind of stuff. And the other was sport. I had to do good enough to stay on the team and not get kicked off. The grades just good enough, just good enough. So I was on the team and stay within the guardrails enough. And I did that pretty good. Not perfect, but I did that pretty well because I love sport. And work is really where I got my uh even though I've worked through MBA and PhD, it was work is where I got all my self-esteem. I just always rose to the top at work. I worked my way through college, got through college, got out with an MBA, and I got a job. And within a few months, I was, a manager. And then before I knew it, I was running the North American division for an Australian group based in Los Angeles and traveling all over the country and the world, Western Canada and England, and went to Australia. And on all the outward measures, I was really successful. I had the title, I had the Mercedes, I had the six-figure salary, I had the apartment, but I was dying as I was an athlete, as I mentioned. I hadn't worked out in years. Uh, I was eating too much, drinking too much. I was single. And one day I remember I got a transfer to Boston, close by. I was raised in Maine, and I was in Colorado and out west for quite a while. But And I remember buying a scale. I hadn't been on a scale in years. You know, I couldn't get my tie done. I couldn't get my belt done. I had Dunlap disease. You know, my belly had Dunlapped over my belt.
Yeah.
But I wasn't giving up, you know. I wasn't gonna wasn't gonna just get bigger clothes all the time. Anyway, I stepped on this scale. I go, oh crap. And I said, you gotta do something, man. You're not gonna be around here very long. I was smoking and anyway, so I did. It was like my aha moment. It was just like a shock. I never forget it. Started running again. I lost some weight. Somehow I stumbled on yoga. I have no idea how. I didn't know anybody that did yoga. There weren't any studios back then,
Mhm.
you know, that I know of, that I knew of. I just bought a DVD tape and just started doing it. And that was talk about mindful athletics. Aware athlete was the first. I just like I've been disconnected from my body and I got back in tune with my body. Couple of years later, my older brother had been estranged from my dad, who was a coach, and my brother was a poet. And he said, "You will play football," or "I don't want to play." Anyway, they were estranged. They didn't talk for years. But anyway, my brother took up meditation. He came back to the family. Then he opened up to my dad, and my dad didn't change. He was in his 70s. He didn't change. And no offense, but he didn't change. Anyway, I got my family back. He said, "You want to try it?" And I did, you know, and I had immediate results in sports. I noticed a big difference. I noticed I had more patience. I just became a better person, cared more about things. But for years I was a closet meditator. You know, I didn't come out. I didn't tell people about it until, you know, much later on. I mean, maybe 15, 20 years into it when people started asking me, you know, what are you doing? What that, you know, started being curious about, you know, how my approach to some things and that it noticed changes in me, things that I started sharing it. And our company eventually adapted the vision statement of mindfully creating community. And we brought in mindful based stress reduction. Everybody did, you know, in the company went through and did learned a meditation. Now they don't all meditate and it's okay. But we had a mindful culture. You know, I've tried a lot of people with yoga, but he doesn't know any. That's okay. But could you bring mindfulness a little bit to, you know, whatever it is you like to do, whether it's running or lifting or Pilates or, you know, so anyway, I just had a tremendous relief from it. And the other area that has been really big has been nonprofit work. You mentioned the university. I taught there as an adjunct for 20 years, couple years, went in full time and helped them run the program, real estate program. We endowed a chair at one time in real estate there, and just, you know, whether it was the housing authority or Habitat for Humanity. We have guys that are president of the food bank. We've really found that through community service, um, first of all, it makes you, it's the right thing to do in capitalism. I think if we don't do those things, it's not going to work. And also we found that through community service, it improves your business like unbelievable because you're out there and people want to do business with you. It wasn't why we do it, but you just meet people on a whole nother level. You got business that comes from a different kind of rather than cold calling, it's warm calling. You know, you're meeting people, you're just talking to them. And in culture, they say, "Hey, yeah, and so wants to come and do this. Do you know anybody?" Sure. You're just out in the community and flow with the community, and just good things happen when you go out and you set that intentional, nice action out there in the universe. I've just found that it's rewarded. Didn't do it for those reasons. Didn't know for years later that it would be rewarded, but it has been many times over. That's part of it too.
Yeah.
Giving of yourself.
Yeah. So that now you've already mentioned. So mindfulness is kind of an umbrella term.
Yeah, I
It
would say
it
so.
could encompass a lot of different things, whereas the word awareness is more
Hmm.
a term that refers to a unique human ability.
Hmm.
And
I see that.
what's that?
I see that. Yeah.
And so for a moment, we could comment on the name for your nonprofit, Living in the Gap. So
Sure.
both Viktor Frankl and Moshe Feldenkrais defined awareness on that would fit into that phrase very well. So go ahead and elaborate on your business name there.
Well, I just find that there's a lot of things forward in business, this everything happens with a gap and when people go into board meetings, I say, you don't think the decisions are made before the meeting. It's the gaps between the meetings when everything happens. But it's not, a good CEO knows what's happening when he runs into a board meeting. He's got it all wired, but also it's the gap. The primary thing is the gap between thoughts. It's not just what we think about, but it's that quietness, that stillness that happens when one thought stops before another one starts. That is rare if we don't work on it. But when you start noticing it, that's when your intuition starts developing. You know, that's when you're okay with silence for a little bit, which can be, and that's when you're okay and you see how many things get solved with time. You don't have to reach out and twix every little thing, but you start having a little more patience. So we also talk about another gap is, we go to say, okay, where you are and where you want to go. Where you are is one spot, and where you want to go with your life is another. And there's a gap in between. But when you identify those two things, if you set out the right system, you can fill in that gap. You can fill in those goals from where you are to where you want to go. There's a lot of gaps.
There's a lot of gaps.
Yeah.
So the most basic one is the gap between thinking and acting.
Yeah, there you go. Little
Yeah,
pause. Yeah.
a little pause. Right.
Yeah. And can I respond and not react?
So I wonder, you used the word compassion already, and so I mean the idea of different types of mindfulness has been around forever. The old know thyself,
Mm-hmm.
back to the Greek philosophers. And so, what kind of knowing are we talking about? Well, the words awareness and observation are two different words, but they're very much akin to each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, if we observe something, we could have a particular type of knowledge about it. We could just we could we could test it. We could hypothesize. We could observe. We could do that kind of thing, and maybe we would learn that the time that it takes for the Earth to circle the sun is 365 days,
Mm-hmm.
and we observed. But I think, to me, that when we're talking about awareness, the gap between thinking and acting, we're talking about something that's more fundamental than just learning a fact, even though it's a fact that we observe that might actually be a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, awareness is observation, and awareness and observation are compassion. If they're not, then it's not the quality of awareness or observation that I'm thinking of. Can you comment on that?
Well,
See, I can know a lot of
I
things.
no, I think that in presence, which is an aware state, I'm present, I'm aware of what's going on.
Right.
That compassion is a natural outflowing
Yes.
of that state.
Right.
That judgmental state, which we're in the next thought, we're in what we think about something where we've already decided we know everything about it, is very difficult to be compassionate about. I also think in a business context, which I keep coming back to, it's just kind of what my slant on what I'm trying to deliver is. People think, oh, that's too soft. I can't. That's compassion. That'll just make them weak. That's just gonna, you know. I'll give you an example. Homelessness, right? Huge problem, growing problem. Not just in America. Now it's starting more around the world, but America is where it's the worst. Well, where it's bad anyway. Maybe we're somewhere depending on how you describe it. But business people often, say, "Oh, no, that's we can't. We'll just make it worse if we try to." I said, "Well, even if you're not compassionate about, that it's the right thing to do and we shouldn't be in the society and have people that, don't have enough to eat whenever so many of us have apparently so much that we're just, what about the business case of it just being bad for business? It's just not good to have somebody have to step over somebody to get into your store. They're not less likely to come into your store.
Yeah.
You're not going to get peak value for your real estate if there's a line of people that don't, with tents out on the sidewalk. So somehow think through,
Or
the
if you've made a
society you want to
negative
be in.
return, yeah.
So, but I actually think if you take the time to be present, that compassion is a natural outflowing of it. You
Yeah.
know, it's one of the in several of the descriptions of mindfulness, compassion, non-judgment of those things come in, and I also think that's because it just comes from clear thinking. From clarity comes compassion. I mean, of course, we're compassionate. Now, if we're too busy and we're minds start up to this and that, and we don't have time, and you know, that's the whole garbage that we've got going on. But it takes a little time, it takes some space to be aware, to be conscious, to be mindful. And when we give ourselves that space, I believe it's compassion is human. That's what it is to be human, is to be compassionate of other human beings and of all beings, not just other human beings.
Right. I wanted to bring out the beauty of that because if we think we're observing but we don't care, then we're not making a true observation of life.
Well, what's your intention again? But go back to
Yeah,
that word that we started with,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
your intention matters, you
Right,
know.
right. So it's just uh, these are beautiful things.
Life's beautiful.
Life is beautiful.
It is, you
Yeah.
know. If you choose it to be, you know, if you choose to see that side of it.
So in your book, you have the 12 principles of mindfulness, or how did you put
I call them the 12 pillars of mindful leadership.
it? Okay, 12 pillars of mindful leadership. And one of them was, you've already mentioned, not being attached to outcomes. I've had
Mhm.
quite a bit of experience with that last year. And so go ahead and elaborate on that.
Well, we just can't be if we're focusing on the outcome, then we can't be present to the process of what we're doing. And
Mhm.
it seems I can't think of the word I'm looking for, contradictory, but that to give up the result will actually most likely improve the result because you can
Exactly.
be involved in the process of what you're doing. And the other thing is with awareness, you can also notice all the other things that are possible out there that if you're just focused on one result, you may not be aware of. You know, in a business context, some of my best things that I've done have resulted from a failure of one thing. If I'm just so worked up about, oh, I didn't get it, I may not notice that. Yeah, but this other opportunity came from it. I met so and so, or I learned this, you know, that I could go and do this. So with awareness and giving up attachment results, then I can be present. Or, you know, for a sports analogy to golf, if I'm just out there, hey, I've got to break 90, I got to break 90. Well, I'm not really actually there with the ball and the swing or the other playing partners that
Yeah.
I'm with. I missed the whole round, you
Right.
know, for that result, which is, you know, that's a cultural thing that we've been fed, that it's all the result, you know. And or the same with profit. It's not business, profit's not a purpose. It's not why we're in business. Now we have to make a profit, you know, or we won't be in business,
Right.
but profit's the result of a purpose driven organization.
Yeah.
So I set up, you know, those things of what I need to do, and then I try to go to work on being present, you
Yeah.
know, actually paying attention and being aware with the people I'm with and the process, and you know, about the things that I said I'd do, but to be present with it. And then I give up those results until specific times, weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever I've decided, when I'm going to review the result and say, you know, it's okay or it's not okay. You know, I got to do these different things. I got to shift or I got to get out of it or whatnot. But if I can't, I have to, at those times, I'm present to the performance. Otherwise, I try to, it's not that I don't think about it. When it comes up, I let it go. And I
Yeah.
come back to
Yeah. There
no,
you go.
this is, you know, I'm going to deal with that next Tuesday. Right
Yeah.
now, I just have to do what's in front of me. I have to be aware and present uh, with what I have to do today.
Yeah. So that's very true in business. And you mentioned coming, you're at work and then you come home. You switch environments, but it's very true there too.
No,
So
totally.
yeah, because there are so many things we don't have any control over, almost everything, really, in terms of outcomes. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times I just remind myself, or I try to remind myself, especially when I'm relating to somebody in the family or any place else. I'm just, in terms of outcomes, I'm just along for the ride. Uh, yeah, I know we have goals and stuff like that, and you work on those, but you're still just along for the ride. You can train with your entire heart for 4 years for the Olympics, and you don't win the gold medal, and you did everything right, and
And is that a failure?
it's not a failure.
Yeah.
Yeah. My son and I, we put up one of those. We were building a house for him, and one of the first things we did, we wanted a little storage, so we put up one of those aluminum frame buildings that just has a like either a canvas or a vinyl top.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to spend quite a bit of time leveling up the ground and building a semi foundation that didn't work. And we come back the next day, and the whole thing was blown over in a terrible windstorm. And he said, and he said, all our work is lost. And I said, no, it's not really, because we actually gained something because we know what's going to work and what's not now.
Mm.
So, you have no control sometimes over the outcome, but that's not bad.
Yeah.
And then letting go of attachment to the outcome. But I think we could move even beyond that if you want to, and
Sure.
comment on letting go of attachment. Period.
Not easy, but it's, and just start noticing how attached we are to things
Mm.
is a practice, right?
Yeah,
How attached we are to my books, my my house, my this, that, how attached we are to those things, which are all going to go.
they're all going to go.
Uh, you know, yeah. So, and it's not that we don't like things or we don't want to have things, but it's just
It's
realizing
not
that
that we don't appreciate them.
it's just not where our happiness is going to come from, an inside job, not just having more. There's so many things people come into our program thinking, if I could just make some more money, get a bigger title, my problems would go away. I go, oh,
Yeah,
problems don't go away. Problems just change. The
that's true.
dynamic of them just changes. If you can't learn that problems are just, the next thing in life, that you just have to look at them and work at them. Everything's a problem. I can't think of one thing I've done in my life that has gone according to plan. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
anything. And I'm a pretty successful guy, but it's always had problems come up to it. So, you know, and sometimes we get attached to our problems.
No, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Uh, Sometimes we find it more comfortable to hang on to a protective habit than
Yeah,
to open ourselves up and move into a broader personality,
totally.
open. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can't tell the difference sometimes,
Well, you have to slow down a little bit and be aware and poke and prod and, yeah.
so what did, now you were always good at business, and some people try to plan out quite a bit of their life. And I'm not sure how you can do that, because I doubt when you were 15 or 20 that you said, I'm going to plan it so that my prime priority in life is going to be present.
No, I didn't even know what it was
What's
at that
that?
time. I didn't even know what it was at that time.
No, you wouldn't know. Um,
I do think, though, you see in the background, there's a vision board that we're just going through a process with that. Is I do think you can do some planning, and where I think the planning really
mm,
comes in is to help you set intentional actions. And sometimes those things happen, but also not be attached to those specific results.
right.
Uh, and be aware that something that or something better might happen.
Yeah,
But our where I think it really comes in is to set those intentional, positive, virtuous actions that I take on a consistent daily basis. And when I do that, I set a certain energy out. And if I could say a woo-woo word, karma, I set my karma out in the universe. And I'm a believer in, I set positive energy out and take it intentional actions that, and if I'm aware, good things come back around. May not be exactly what I thought, but I do think, you know, that I can plan to a certain degree.
Oh, sure. I think planning is part of certain processes.
So
You've talked before about Eckhart Tolle and having an inner goal and outer goal,
yeah, inner purpose, outer purpose. Yeah.
inner purpose, outer purpose, and the outer purpose we can definitely do some planning with.
Yes.
Uh, the inner purpose actually, to be present doesn't require any planning. It's just
I
now.
am all right. Can I disagree with you? Am I allowed to do that?
Sure, but
For me, it requires a practice.
it
And
requires
I play, so
yes,
I may be turning the word on you a little bit, but I'm planning my
yes,
practices,
and
and
that's a good thing to
I work
clarify.
on that I practice my presence. I have a set of time set aside that here's my yoga or my meditation, and or whatever it is that I've decided is part of my prayer, is part of what is my boom, so that I present, because it's not going to happen on accident.
That's 100% true, and that has been the failing or the disappointment of some of people who have somatic systems
Yeah.
to offer or whatever, because intention and that kind of doing are 100% necessary. But when you are in a particular moment,
Yes.
that's no longer a process. That's there.
I also believe, after a while, you can let a lot of the planning go, that it'll happen. After a while, I think a lot of the planning can go, that you just have wired yourself towards producing good things, you know?
So to truly observe something, if we truly bring ourselves to observe something, it already radically changes it. I think that's what you're saying. It makes such a big difference. So that,
Well, so
you know, I,
the science is saying it doesn't even exist till we observe it. So
yeah,
till it's
totally.
observed.
Yeah, that's true. That's,
So
and it's, and it's
definitely
great.
it changes it.
It's not only interesting, but practical to understand some of those concepts. But
Totally, absolutely, and very rewarding. I mean, to
yeah.
start saying, "Hey, I can actually," I'm not creating I'm creating what I'm seeing out there. I'm creating, my
Right.
interpretation of the world.
So I am a Feldenkrais practitioner, and that's a form of somatic education.
Yeah, I've read a lot of his stuff, and he's referenced in my book. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, I have your book, but I didn't have
Yep.
time to finish all of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if most people would have no interest in reading The Body of Mature Behavior, which was his foundational work.
Yeah. I didn't read that one.
But
Yeah.
if you don't mind the work that's written in 1949 in some older language,
Totally.
uh, that's a little bit dense. If you read the introduction by Mark Ginsburg and pay particular attention to that, you will be able to follow his. If you take
Yeah.
the time to do it, follow his thought, and it's amazing actually.
Hmm.
Uh, it's like at first when you grasp it, it's like, oh, this is preposterous, but it's absolutely true.
As I mentioned to you when we were just talking before we hopped on, I did so much of this through body movement, through where, because I'm wired that way,
Right. I know you
physical,
are.
and I've
See,
saw so much to see through body movement. Really, anyway, I find it's a great access for me.
yeah. So his idea is that our natural processes would work fine if we don't interfere with them. But in the course of growing up, we have developed all kinds of tensions and neuroses and habits that don't
Yeah,
serve. And so
totally.
the beauty of neuroplasticity is the downside is you can learn all these things that are to your detriment, and we do.
Hmm.
Nobody's perfect. But the upside is you can learn not to do that.
Yeah.
anyway, so, but wherever you go, you bring your body with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so something that really helps me is just you're in any situation, could be in a meeting at work, could be anything, but you feel your feet on the floor.
Oh, in
And
a stressful meeting or whatever, totally. Just be in my
yeah,
body and
and
just
you bring yourself right into who
notice
you
myself
are.
breathing and be in my body. There's a
Yeah.
guy, Ken Robinson, who was an English scholar, educator. He just said one of his books says, "My body became something that just took my head from meeting to meeting." I love that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, these somatic methods are nice to get you out of
yeah,
it. So let me
absolutely.
ask you another question if you have
Sure, I
uh,
do.
how can mindfulness this is another term that's just thrown around, but how can it actually help you achieve your potential?
Uh, well, to coin a phrase, it gets you out of the way. You know, we're blocking it. We have so many blind spots and so much, I mean, in sports, we know people perform the best when they're in what's called the zone,
Mhm.
right? Which in my word of explaining that's when the inside and the outside world and the outside world melt. And it's just all one thing.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about what I'm going to do. It's just like, and I believe we can create zones all day long, not every minute or anything, but even at work or at home and whatnot, we can find ourselves and start knowing what the zone is. And that's when we find our potential. When we don't, when a family member says something, I'm not thinking about I just know intuitively and it brings my best potential as a father and as a husband. I just go do the dishes, just go walk the dog. I just go shut my mouth, whatever it is,
Yeah.
in a business sense, in a business meeting too. I mean, I get out, I just have an intuitive sense of what to do next,
Yeah.
and I would take time and I wouldn't just jump and everything. And I'd make sure the numbers added up and all those kind of things. But yeah, just to get out of my way, get out of my own way and to be able to have a true inspiring conversation with somebody or to ask a question that shouldn't be asked or to whatever it is, just to pull the band-aid off.
Yeah. That's an excellent way to kind of bring the conversation to a conclusion. Is that this thing of getting out of your own way is another phrase that's thrown around, but you have clarity on what that is because of presence.
The zone, just get in the
Yeah.
zone, you know,
So it becomes a
for
real
whatever,
yeah.
business or writing a book or sports or, family. How do it's just different ways of saying that too. How do
Yeah.
I,
So I am kind of in tune. I'm not a big time entrepreneur, but anyway, I'm kind of in tune with this process of presence opening you up to a better business environment too. I have a few things I want to accomplish. So
awesome.
want to thank you for bringing that topic up and for opening me up to it a little bit more. I can tell that you probably are open. You are more open to the world than when you first had
Oh,
your initial
absolutely.
success at business, and
Absolutely.
that's made your business better too. So that's your emphasis.
Well,
Yeah,
and if it doesn't make you happy, what good is it? You know?
true. Yeah,
So
and so could you? I don't know if you want to hold up a copy, but your
sure.
book is
Yeah,
Profit with Presence.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you
Profit
can
with
get that.
Presence, the 12 Pillars of Mindful Leadership.
Yeah.
It's available on Amazon or on our website, livinginthegap.org. And also, there's a lot of free resources on the website and links to current programs that we have available, those kind of things. But hope you get a copy.
Okay. So yeah, and your website again?
Livinginthegap.org.
Com. Dot
Yeah.
com. Dot
Or
org.
org, O-R-G. It's a nonprofit.
Livinginthegap.org.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
nonprofit.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.